So glad you could join us today. We very much look forward to sharing with you our 2025 State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. And we'll give people just a moment or two to join on, but will not delay for more than just a moment. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. So the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy is a nonprofit research organization that develops policies to reduce energy waste and combat climate change. Our independent analysis advances investments, programs, and behaviors that use energy more effectively and help build an equitable, clean energy future. You can, of course, learn more about us at aceeee.org. I'm going to walk us through a few housekeeping details for the presentation. We are recording this webinar and we'll be making it available to all registrants within a few business days, along with the slides. To ask a question during the webinar, please submit it via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to it during our Q&A segment towards the end of the webinar. You can upvote questions you think are particularly good, and we will prioritize those. So do keep an eye on the Q&A section and mark those questions that you also think would be good to discuss. And finally, you can talk with one another and network via the chat button at the bottom of your screen. So without further ado, let me introduce you to today's panelists. Mark Kreswick is the Senior Policy Director here at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. He supports the success of the members of ACEEE's policy team and our partners, shaping decisions at the local, state, utility, and federal levels across every part of the economy as we accelerate ambition for improving energy efficiency and centering those most historically overburdened and underserved in our communities. Mark Silberg is the Energy Policy Advisor to Colorado's Governor Jared Polis's office. Mark focuses on administrative, legislative, and regulatory strategies to advance the governor's goal of 100% clean energy by 2040 and elimination of statewide greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And Jackie Daticus, our third presenter, is the Chief Executive Officer for Green Coast Enterprise. She chairs a committee of Louisiana's Construction Code Council, where she helped the state adopt the latest model building code. At Green Coast Enterprises, she launched a consulting firm that provides services to property owners, municipalities, and utilities seeking to be more energy efficient. Now, I am your moderator today. I am the State and Utility Program Director at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, where I work to advance energy efficiency policies and practices that increase economic prosperity for all, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, and accelerate our transition to a more just, reliable, and affordable clean energy future. So with no further delay, let me pass you to Mark Kreswick, that is, to start off the presentation.
Thank you so much, Forrest, and thank you to everyone for joining this conversation. As Forrest said, we are delighted to present the results of the 16th edition of ACEEE's State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. We've been grading the states and providing just a wealth of information about different state policies across 6 different categories. That includes utility programs to advance energy efficiency, transportation policies, policies to invest and improve our building stocks, both new and existing buildings across each of the states, what state governments are doing to lead by example and change their practices, whether that's procurement or otherwise, to continue to improve energy efficiency and lower costs for households, industrial energy efficiency, appliance and clean lighting standards. Kind of across the entire economy, we look at dozens of different policies of different outcomes that help people save money, save energy, reduce waste, improve their economy, create jobs. And then we rank the states based upon those policies that they put in place to achieve those shared objectives that we all have. One of the features of the 16th edition of the State Energy Efficiency Scorecard that's new and different this year is that we did move to a 100-point scale. Historically, every other edition of the State Energy Efficiency Scorecard has used a 50-point scale. We expanded to 100 points in order to create a little bit more opportunity for more granular, detailed information about each one of those policies. Going forward, using a 100-point scale, you'll be able to see a little bit more variation, a little more detail in the scoring going forward. I do need to acknowledge just the huge number of people who helped us put forth this scorecard. That includes each of the authors that you can see here, especially Sagarika Subramanian, Mike Specian, Forrest Bradley Wright, Davy Ghosh, Paul Mooney, Stephanie Social-Culture, Archie Frazier, Brian Fady, and Joanna Maurer. Each of them worked on one of the many chapters of the scorecard. Just incredible contributions from our colleagues and former colleagues here at ACEEE, as well as a number of people on the communications, publications, editorial team who supported each one of each aspect of this work. And then, of course, our dozens of external reviewers. We could not do this without the support and help of so many people inside state government, in governor's offices, energy offices, and the Public Utility Commission. So to each of you who spent time to supply this information, to respond and review this scorecard before it was published, we simply cannot thank you enough for your contributions, both in leading and advancing these policies to help the residents of your state, but also to put forward this scorecard. So thank you. The biggest top line result from the scorecard that we wanted to highlight is a return to increased investment in energy efficiency by utilities in the states. So we saw a record high level of investment, more than $8.8 billion invested into energy efficiency in states through utility energy efficiency programs. This is a new record. We'd seen kind of a decrease and a flattening after the pandemic and throughout the course of the pandemic that has only now recovered. That investment has come with, again, increased energy savings, just a tremendous benefit to everyone who is receiving that investment by the utilities. So very exciting to see that increase again. I just want to run through some other high-level numbers before we get to the main event of the rankings. One of the other really exciting developments in the space was not just an increase in investment, but specifically a humongous increase in investment in low-income households specifically. In 2021, there was just over $1 billion invested by states into energy efficiency for low-income households. That nearly doubled to more than $2 billion to the most energy-burdened, overburdened, and underserved communities by states from just 2021 to 2023. So that's really a remarkable accomplishment and just really great appreciation. However, one flag is that increase in low-income households was largely driven, nearly 3/4 of that, by just 4 states. There's still tremendous opportunity and room for other states to similarly step up and invest more of their energy efficiency achievement into those low-income households who need the most help to lower their energy burdens and help avoid things like utility shutoffs. We also saw a tremendous amount of electricity savings, more than 0.5% of 2023 sales by electric companies in the country were met with energy efficiency. So as we've returned to an era of potential load growth, where data centers and other investments are increasing electricity demand, we've been relatively flat for the last few decades. This level of investment in energy efficiency is so critical to help us meet demand, maintain reliability, and lower costs in this new era. And that's what some of these states are stepping up, but again, more to be done, as well as on the gas side. Again, a new record as well in terms of energy efficiency achievement in reducing the amount of gas used. That's a tremendous development here as well. I want to highlight there were 24 different jurisdictions, nearly half of the country, 23 states in the District of Columbia, that actually reduced the number of vehicle miles traveled on a per capita basis, averaged over approximately a decade. That's another trend we're seeing, where nearly half the states are actually reducing the amount of vehicle miles traveled per person in their states through investments in transit and other things. We've also seen development. Historically, the state scorecard is focused significantly on construction of new buildings. We've increased the focus on existing buildings since certainly that's where most of us live and work. And one of the great developments is 5 jurisdictions, 4 states in the District of Columbia that have stepped up and started adopting performance standards for existing buildings. And then we've also seen 20 jurisdictions that set industrial decarbonization goals and energy efficiency goals as part of the climate pollution reduction grant process, where states were planning for how to reduce climate pollution. They found that setting a goal for industrial energy efficiency and decarbonization was something, a great new development. And finally, we've seen 16 jurisdictions that have adopted appliance efficiency or clean lighting standards, which are tremendously impactful. Those state-level appliance efficiency or clean lighting standards build on federal policies that have saved households more than $500 each annually in this country over the last few years. So just a really incredible contribution that state-level appliance efficiency standards and clean lighting standards can make to that federal development. And now, it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for, the reveal of those rankings. So just want to leave this up here if we want to highlight a few things. 4 of the top 5 states were unchanged from previous years, in California, Massachusetts, and New York as the top 3. But we had a new development of Maryland jumping into a tie for 4th place with the state of Vermont. So the first time Maryland reached the top 5. That was really great result due to an increased focus on the transportation sector and buildings in particular. Maryland was one of those jurisdictions that did adopt a building performance standard. And so that really increased its score in existing buildings. Some of the other top 10 states included Washington, Colorado for the first time reached the top 10. We're going to hear more about that, but increased 6 spots to make the top 10 for the first time. Again, similar to Maryland, a great focus on Colorado is one of the other states that adopted a building performance standard for existing buildings, is the only state in the entire country to implement a clean heat standard to improve the energy efficiency and decrease the amount of pollution coming from heating in both the residential, commercial, and industrial sectors, as well as adoption of the latest clean vehicle standards. Colorado is also the only state with California to adopt the full suite of appliance efficiency standards and clean lighting standards that's recommended by the Appliance Standards Awareness Program. So Colorado's making tremendous strides across the board. New Jersey also came in at number 8, ranking in the top 10 for the first time since 2008. It's been a long time, 16 years since New Jersey was in the top 10, but that really was on the back of tremendous success with the utility energy efficiency programs. New Jersey increased their savings from utility energy efficiency programs by nearly 90%, far more than any other state in the country during the period since the last scorecard. So those are some of our state highlights. You can see more information here about each of those states: Maryland, Colorado, New Jersey. The last state I'm going to focus on here is Louisiana. Louisiana was our most improved state, climbed 9 spots from 46th to 37th. You're going to hear more about that in a moment as well. But that was really driven by an increased focus on building codes and adoption of the latest model building energy codes. The Louisiana also set new energy efficiency targets for the utilities and for actually an independent administrator of utility energy efficiency programs. So becoming the first southern state to take that approach to ensuring that ratepayers receive the full benefits of energy efficiency investments. So we're going to probably see continued improvement, particularly in Louisiana's utility score. There are some areas for each of these states to continue to improve. Colorado is likely to improve in the utility score like Louisiana, as it's set new targets in the clean heat standard, new goals for their energy efficiency program. So Colorado is likely to also continue improving. New Jersey is not one of the states like Colorado and Maryland that have adopted a building performance standard, so could really focus more on existing standards. New Jersey also hasn't updated the appliance standards in a couple years, so it's another place where New Jersey could improve. And Maryland is in the process of discussing a clean heat standard and an appliance emission standard. If Maryland were to finalize those policies, you'd likely see continued growth. Louisiana certainly still fairly low ranking despite its incredible growth and has a lot of room to improve in other areas. With that, I'll turn it back to Forrest to introduce our next speaker.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're going next to Mark to talk a little bit about Colorado. Mark Silver, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. And it's good to see such a great turnout for interest in state policy in this area. We know this is as important time as ever for states to continue their leadership on these shared goals of reducing pollution and increasing household energy affordability. And really glad to see Colorado moving into the top 10 this year. I think that's really a testament to our systemic approach to these issues and our all of government strategy to address greenhouse gas emissions, reduce the cost of living in Colorado, and really think comprehensively and across sectors on opportunities in rulemaking and incentives and in other venues to implement these solutions for Coloradans. What I wanted to do with my time here today is share a little bit of context for how we came to settle and implement some of these policies, and then share with you all a little bit of a sneak preview of some of the things to come in Colorado that might be of interest to this group. So since Governor Polis took office, we've taken a sector by sector approach to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, addressing local air pollution, and addressing energy affordability. And as a general principle, oftentimes we focus on outcomes, competition, and a technology agnostic approach so that implementers can focus on the outcomes we want to see rather than prescribing the exact program parameters or exact design of these policies. So for instance, this looks like our utility clean energy planning framework, which focuses on utilities reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but really leaving it up to them and to market competition to identify the portfolio of clean resources that can help move toward our goal of an 80% reduction in GHG emissions in the electric power sector from 2005 levels by 2030. Current CEPs in our state have us on track statewide for around an 86 to 87% reduction in GHG emissions by the end of the decade. And that's really a testament to this competitive and technology neutral approach. It looks like our goal of getting 940,000 light duty zero emission vehicles on the road in Colorado by 2030 and detailed in ACEEE's report is the suite of both regulatory measures and incentive policies that Colorado has put in place to get there, including, just last year, Colorado reaching #1 in market share for EVs in the state. And a lot of this work has boiled down to really close collaboration between state agencies and our implementers, be they utilities, energy service providers, the private sector. And for the purpose of this conversation, really a partnership between our energy office in Colorado, our Public Utilities Commission, and our air regulators. And so we started on this journey really in earnest in January 2021 when we released our first greenhouse gas pollution reduction roadmap that detailed a number of near-term actions, both regulatory and incentive and programmatic, that Colorado focused on to make progress toward our statewide goals of having GHG emissions by 2030 and reaching net zero by mid-century. By the end of 2022, we had completed or begun implementation of about 90% of those first actions and began work on a second GHG roadmap that we finished in February last year. What we've seen with that plan, which details 49 new near-term actions for us to focus on, is that assuming there is no new state policy in Colorado after 2026, we'll meet our 2030 GHG target in 2031. So we're well on our way, but know that more work needs to be done. ACEEE has done a really nice job in this report of detailing kind of some of the biggest wedges in the pies for reducing emissions across the economy here in Colorado. That included things like our clean vehicle sales standards. That's Advanced Clean Cars 2, which has us achieving 82% new light duty ZEV vehicle sales by 2032, our Advanced Clean Trucks rule and low NOx omnibus rule that moves forward on clean trucks. We've also worked in the last year really deeply on the intersection of housing policy, land use, transit, and transportation policy, including putting forward the state's first VMT reduction strategy focused on multimodal transit, and land use reforms in Colorado, and really thinking about how we can build a Colorado for the future where you have a choice to certainly drive, but also access to alternative modes of transportation that can reduce emissions and improve access and choice for Coloradans. We've, as mentioned, implemented a number of energy efficiency standards for appliances. Our utility clean heat standard looks very much like our clean electricity framework in the state, again, focused on outcomes and leaving it to utilities to propose clean heat programs that meet those emission standards through a variety of measures, including but not exclusively electrification. We've updated our statewide building code and are working on a new green stretch code for voluntary adoption by local governments. We've implemented building performance standards, and I'll speak in a little bit to some of the ways in which we're building on that framework for existing buildings to support them in achieving their targets. We're among the first states to institute industrial decarbonization goals, including achieving a 20% reduction in GHG emissions from that sector by the end of the decade. We, of course, have energy efficiency standards for our investor-owned utilities, and a couple of other more technical measures that really help move the needle on some of these planning processes, including the use of social cost of carbon in utility planning, in utility transportation electrification plans, and other measures. And lastly, I'll mention, just in terms of the current policy landscape, Colorado has a plethora of grant programs and tax credits for everything ranging from heat pumps to geothermal energy to industrial decarbonization. And it's really that, of course, combination of carrots and sticks that is helping drive progress in those sectors. Things to look forward to. So we have, for the first time, instituted a statewide sustainability plan. Mark mentioned leading by example. This is really important for the state. We have a long history of governors passing executive orders that focus on everything from water conservation to energy efficiency to greenhouse gas emissions reductions in the built environment and fleets for Colorado state operations. For the first time, we actually have a centralized entity that can implement that work for the state, and we're really excited to dig into some of those projects that not only reduce air pollution and advance affordability, but also help save taxpayer dollars. Last year, we implemented what we think is a relatively novel framework focused on community-based gas alternative planning. We are in the process of identifying up to 5 communities who have volunteered to work very closely with our utilities in Colorado on exploring a combination of place-based solutions to alternatives to gas distribution that includes home electrification efforts, thermal energy networks, geothermal projects, and other non-pipe alternatives. And we're really excited to see the kind of experimentation that can happen through some of those community-based initiatives, and also opportunities to really start exploring some of the thorny issues related to gas system transition and co-planning between gas system investments and the electric power sector. At the end of this year, we're expecting to see some of those first GHG reduction plans come forward for our industrial facilities covered under our industrial decarbonization rules. And that'll give us a really good sense for the balance between energy efficiency upgrades, electrification initiatives, carbon capture projects, and other solutions that are naturally really fit to purpose for the different variety of industrial facilities we have in the state, ranging from oil refining to recycling facilities to concrete manufacturing and others. And of course, we can't do this work without a solid regulatory environment as well, which is why we've also brought in what was originally our Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, which is now called our Energy and Carbon Management Commission, to focus their attention on things like permitting for the opportunity in the both shallow and deep geothermal space for heating and cooling and electricity projects respectively, as well as moves for Colorado to seek Class 6 well primacy to help facilitate some of those carbon capture projects that we know will be helpful in addressing industrial emissions in the state. Something else we're working on in our current legislative session is around building on our legacy of establishing really flexible funding mechanisms for our sector by sector approach to reducing emissions and supporting customers in adopting these solutions. So in 2021, SB 21260 developed new transportation electrification enterprises focus on adopting ZEV vehicles in the transit area for fleets and expanding EV charging for communities. We're looking to do something similar this year for the built environment. So establishing a building decarbonization enterprise that initially will really focus on helping those 8,500 or so buildings covered by our state's building performance standard receive technical assistance and advice to meet their 2030 goals. We've also proposed somewhere on the order of $100 million of concessionary capital through our state treasurer that would be used to expand and augment on-bill repayment programs in the state. We see a lot of promise for on-bill financing as one of many financing tools to help customers adopt everything from electrification solutions to weatherization and similar projects. We're also really excited to have received some resources to build what we're colloquially calling a one-stop shop tool, where we recognize that both the state, local, utility, and federal incentive and bill assistance environment is quite complicated for customers to navigate, and are going to be piloting an initiative this summer where any customer can come into this portal and identify the rebates, incentives, tax credits, and other bill assistance programs that are available to them, and updating that in real time. And we're particularly excited that this tool is something that both service providers can use in the field, but also utility customer service members could use on the back end. If a customer calls and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a heat pump, how do I access it?" This will be the tool to do that, and we look forward to sharing our lessons learned on that project with other states and interested parties to see if we can replicate that kind of solution. Ultimately, I'll leave you with this. I mean, I think we are beginning to scratch the surface on questions on the long-term future of the gas distribution system in Colorado, and are seeing some very promising non-pipe alternative projects come forward. But in a state with a patchwork of electric and gas utility providers, really understanding those business model opportunities to transition past reliance on gas and the volatility in the gas market is something we're very focused on in an interagency way. And as I mentioned at the outset, we think that the opportunity that presents itself at the intersection of all of these issues in housing, land use reforms, siting and permitting reforms, and that continued focus on technology agnosticism and affordability where Colorado will continue to lean. So with that, thank you for having me. I hope that was helpful and look forward to answering questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. Looking forward to now passing you to our final presenter, Jackie Daticus with Green Coast Enterprises.
Hi, thank you, Forrest. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be here today on behalf of Louisiana. Forrest and I have had the pleasure of working on energy efficiency things in this state for 15 years together. And we have long waited for the day that we'll be ahead of South Carolina in this ranking. So here we are. We have made it into the 30s, and I think it's only upwards from here. And thank you to everyone who has supported Forrest, the Alliance for Affordable Energy, many of our other interveners for years in this state. We've come a long way. My portion of this story is the work that we've done on building codes. And that work really got started actually in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. We have had a statewide uniform minimum maximum code since 2007. We started with the IRC, the IBC, and a couple of the other main I codes. And over the course of the last 20 years, we've slowly but surely expanded our enabling legislation so that we now adopt the full suite of I codes, including the IECC, on a 5-year cycle. So we are required under our enabling legislation to have adopted the most recently published ICC codes within 5 years. So for 2021, we needed to adopt by 2026. For 2024, we need to adopt by 2029. For a very long time, though, we were actually stuck at the 2009 IECC under our enabling legislation. Like many states I know, 2009 served us well until it didn't anymore. And the story of how we got to this change was really a number of factors. First, it was a growing understanding of the importance of building codes as we look at our insurance crisis in the state and how we ensure that as we build in the future, we're building strong and we're building with a long-term time horizon in mind. Second, it was the realization that as new technology gets introduced into our markets, be it heat pumps, be it spray foam, be it new ways to build, leaving out a chapter of the I codes was actually leading to some pretty bad outcomes within our new construction buildings. So in 2020 and 2021, a pretty broad coalition came together to change our enabling legislation, and we actually got it passed through the Louisiana State House and Senate unanimously. I'll say it again. The Energy Code in Louisiana was passed unanimously. through our House and our Senate, which then enabled us to create the Energy Code Transition Committee that met with the goal of reviewing, amending, and adopting the code to match our 2021 adoption cycle in 2024. So as of 2024, we have moved to an amended 2021 I-code in the state. And actually this summer, we'll be starting our 2024 review cycle, in which will be the first time that IECC code gets reviewed in the same pattern and grouping as the IRC, the IBC, the mechanical code, the plumbing code. And we'll just keep doing that going forward, which is really exciting. So we're not permanently stuck on any of the codes anymore. They will all move and grow as the code moves and grows nationally. Now, in addition to the IECC, though, Louisiana did a number of important things really from the perspective of building stronger and building more resilient in our state. We also had an entire section of our code review cycle that reviewed how high we build above the floodplain, otherwise known as freeboard. And we have actually adopted above code rules in Wind Zone 3 in the state that brings us closer in alignment with the fortified standard. All of this will continue to be part of the way we think about our code in this state, and the reasons why we continue to adopt this code, and also why we consider it really important that we have one uniform statewide code that, while is also the minimum, is also the maximum. It makes it very clear to anyone who's constructing in the state what the rules are in order to be in compliance. And really, I just have to say, looking ahead, I'm quite excited actually to enter this 2024 code cycle. I think too often the IECC sits alone and gets talked about separately from all the other codes, and it really needs to be reviewed as part of the full suite of building codes so they can speak to each other. And that's really probably my biggest pitch to everyone nationally, is that we do a better job of actually realizing that the IECC is an important part of the full codes package, that the IMC speaks to it, the IRC speaks to it, International Residential Code, International Building Code, which is the commercial code, your mechanical code, and every time we leave the IECC behind and we get stuck on a previous version, it actually creates bad outcomes in our buildings. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone today for acknowledging the work we've done here in Louisiana.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. So we turn now to the Q&A section of today's webinar. I've seen a little bit of activity going on in the Q&A area. Just as a reminder, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a place where you can submit your questions. I'm going to start with a quick one that you'll see a response in here, but Jackie, since you were just talking about it, can you please say what the ICC stands for? And then we'll get to some more.
The International Construction Code, which is what most of our building codes in the US pull off of. If you really want to go down a code wormhole, I can talk about all the different types of code that you could possibly adopt, but most places in the US follow the ICC, and some portion of its suite of codes.
The first question that was asked is a really good one. Mark, you had mentioned that there were 4 states really driving growth on spending on low-income programs. And the question was just to identify which states those were and any factors that were driving the increase in investment.
Absolutely. And I think the question was specifically about the increase in low-income household investment. And those 4 states that were driving around 3/4 of that increase were California, Michigan, Massachusetts, and New York. Each one of those states has adopted a policy of prioritizing low-income households, even in statute in the case of Michigan, for example, requiring a minimum level of energy savings to be achieved by the utilities running energy efficiency programs. New York has a policy of prioritizing ensuring that a minimum percentage of the benefits of investment in all kinds of different clean energy policies, including energy efficiency policies, a minimum percentage has to reach those overburdened and underserved constituencies. Massachusetts, this isn't reflected in this scorecard, but just actually finalized a new 3-year program cycle, which tremendously increases the level of focus and investment in low-income households. I actually noticed in the chat Mary Wambui, who sits on the advisory board for the Energy Efficiency Advisory Council in Massachusetts, who had a strong role in making that happen. But it's engagement like that by folks like Mary in the process to make sure that low-income households are prioritized, and that's been reflected in again states like California, Massachusetts, New York, and Michigan. So it just takes that extra focus, either a gubernatorial decision, a public utility commission, legislative decision, or the engagement of stakeholders to tell the decision makers, hey, we want to make sure that those who are most energy burdened, who are faced with utility shutoffs or energy insecurity, who make those choices every day about whether to keep the lights on or feed their families, afford medicine, what temperature they set their thermostat at when it's very cold or very hot outside, because they're uncertain whether or not they're going to be able to afford their energy bills. Those are the people who most need energy efficiency. Also, low-income households tend to have the lowest tend to have more energy waste because the quality of the home or apartment that they're living in isn't sufficiently, it doesn't have enough insulation. It's not necessarily air, so there might be a broken window. So fixing health and safety repairs to be able to invest in energy efficiency, those are the households that most need this. And it's just been really encouraging to see those states step up, and other states are as well, right? So other states are starting to do the same thing, set those priorities for low-income households, minimum percentage of investment. And so we expect to see significantly increased investment and achievement of energy savings for low-income households from more states in the future.
Excellent. There is a question here about the methodologies used from past scorecards to current scorecard. I will say that there are refinements and sort of an evolution of kind of the scoring methodologies that ACEEE uses, because of course the energy efficiency landscape itself is shifting. The question here was specifically about the annual investment in energy efficiency. And as Mark noted, I don't think that there has been a change in there, but I do want to just acknowledge that that the state scorecard does evolve over time. And this particular scorecard reflects shifts in policy. And actually, we're starting to see a more multifaceted kind of set of priorities that are driving investment in energy efficiency. So while the investment in energy efficiency continues to go up, it's not all as it had been, and this is utility energy efficiency that I'm speaking to, it's not all in just energy savings. There are priorities to do with decarbonization, equity, even capacity reductions that that investment is going towards. So just, be aware and, and look forward as we continue to produce these scorecards and continue to evolve the metrics that we look at and the scores that go along with it. Let's see, there's a question here about the new federal administration's changes in priorities from the last administration and what impacts those are having at the state level. And Mark, would you want to start us off on that? And well,
I can, and it speaks to a couple different questions in the Q&A and in the chat. So just so everybody fully understands, the data collection period closed near the end of 2024. And so many of the programs in the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law aren't actually significantly reflected in this data. For instance, the utility spending data, which is from 2023, is again almost entirely independent of the Inflation Reduction Act. So those are state level decisions. Again, this is a state scorecard. So we're really looking at what are the state level decisions that are being made. And those are largely being made by utility regulators, by the utilities to invest in energy efficiency because it lowers costs, because it improves the reliability of the grid and helps keep the light on. Keep the lights on at the most cost-effective way, right? Energy efficiency is our least cost, fastest, most able to deploy resource in this new era of load growth as well. So again, this data, the decisions that are being made that we're scoring here are largely independent of the Inflation Reduction Act. That being said, future editions certainly would have reflect some impacts of the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so to whatever extent those policies are subsequently rolled back by the new federal administration, that could certainly show up in future scorecards, but not necessarily reflected in this one. And then I'll turn it over to Mark, the other Mark, if he wants to speak to what are states doing to respond in this moment to the changes at the federal level.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I mean, it's a problem. In a lot of cases, the um, utilities in our state have been relying on significant dollars from USDA and others to move forward faster on some of their deployment of clean energy and battery storage resources. We have funding around things like Solar for All and GGRF that remain in turmoil, although as of a couple of weeks ago, some of those have reopened. It creates a lot of uncertainty in the market. I mean, we have somewhere on the order of $200 million worth of on-bill finance projects in the state, combination of energy efficiency initiatives, electrification, other building upgrades that are ready to go, waiting for those GGRF dollars to arrive, and that creates a really difficult business environment for these businesses or multifamily building owners or whomever to plan for the future. So, we, of course, have joined a number of states in multiple lawsuits. In many cases, at least in our case, these contracts are, signed legal documents with, clear obligations from the federal government to pay. And in those cases, we're cautiously optimistic that funding will reopen. In other cases, we'll sort of have to see how the courts handle it. We are, as I mentioned, thinking about other ways for the state to sort of buttress and provide, bridges during this time of uncertainty. I think the opportunity around on-bill financing for us is one. Thinking about the ways in which the state can step up and supplement things like our existing EV tax credits and incentives is another. But at the end of the day, some of these federal moves are just going to make things more uncertain and more expensive in the transition. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out over the next couple of years.
Can I add a comment from the Louisiana perspective on this one as well? It's made me really grateful for the fact that we passed local legislation around so much of this. So Louisiana's building code is going to exist no matter what happens at the federal level. And the fact that the way we changed it means that we're going to be able to adopt future versions of the IECC, means that we'll continue to be able to work on this locally. And I just think that's a really important thing for us all to remember as the federal government swings back and forth over time, is the opportunities we have to make these local changes in law and rules and code in energy efficiency programs. They survive. And it's really important to invest in that really across the country, because then you get opportunities like in Louisiana to make big leaps forward where otherwise you might not see that change.
Jackie, I think I'm going to keep you there for just a moment. Early in your presentation, you talked about Louisiana's movement in the state rankings, and of course the state scorecard. It really features the rankings among states, but there is a lot of information in there on much more granular details and even just the data that's in there. And I wonder if I could ask each of you to speak just a little bit to how you see the state scorecard and the kind of research behind it playing into the kind of policy efforts that move energy efficiency forward in individual states. So, of course, energy efficiency is not static. It is moving and evolving all the time because people are engaging with the issue and using the information. Jackie, interested in your thoughts, and then Mark, come to you next, just on how the ACEEE scorecard actually plays into the movement of policy in your respective states.
Oh, absolutely. In Louisiana, we rank last in a lot of things, and we're not actually that proud about it. It does actually rankle most of us who live here in the state to be last in everything. And so scorecards like this do light a fire under our legislators, under our public service commissioners, under our other people in the industry. Home builders actually are really excited about this award today in the state of Louisiana award. We're talking about it as an award. We made it to 37. And when I was joking about us actually finally being ahead of South Carolina, that was actually a specific quote from almost, I think, over 10 years ago, Forrest, at our Public Service Commission, when ACEEE came down to intervene in the energy efficiency docket and presented a scorecard in which we, what I think our peak before this was maybe 46. Mostly we've been fighting for 51st. And one of our public service commissioners looked up and said, "We're behind South Carolina. That's unacceptable." And so I think we might dream one day that we'd be number one, but the reality is for us, fighting to get into the 30s and now probably fighting to get into the 20s actually allows us to put pressure on people in positions of power to make change. And the detail beyond just those numbers, where we can point out, oh, we've moved ahead in building codes. We see that we might move ahead in energy efficiency programs, but they got to stick to it. They can't backslide. And quite frankly, we've not done nearly enough in transportation, allows us to continue our advocacy work here on the ground to make those local and statewide changes that become permanent and become part of our economy.
Thank you, Jackie. Mark,
and I would just build off.
question?
Yeah, I would just build off of that. I mean, healthy competition between the laboratories of democracy is always a good thing. And so it is true that states look to each other to, vie for increased rankings on any number of dimensions. And certainly this is one of them. I think from a policy perspective, right, we often find ourselves asking what tools are left in the toolbox and what have we missed? And so having a kind of consolidated snapshot of the landscape of options and what experiments are happening in other places and what's working and what's not, and what else should we be pursuing is a question we ask ourselves every day. And so these kind of efforts help us really do that kind of analysis on what are the gaps and what's working well, and where do we have room for improvement. And certainly that's true on the executive branch side, but it's also true with our regulators. It's true with our legislators. And so having this kind of, public data available to us is just super helpful.
We're going to move on to another question about building codes. Mark Creswick, anything you'd want to add to that right now? Okay, let's keep moving. We have a question here for Jackie asking how advocates overcame any opposition, and it specifically identifies the home builders lobby in getting the building codes to move and she mentions just the legislative process.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, because it's my favorite part of the story, which is that the home builders introduced the legislation for us and were a fundamental part of our coalition to actually update the building codes in the state, the Louisiana home builders, that is, and have been a really, really important part of building that coalition and investing in our code. And my advice to everyone is to actually really get to know your statewide local home builders and bring them into the conversation. It was really, really important for our home builders in the state that we follow the same process that we had done for the rest of our codes, which was to review, amend, and adopt, which we take very seriously. We had 14 meetings to review the IECC code in our transition committee. The transition committee was actually set with 14 specific organizations who could appoint to the transition committee, home builders being one of them. ResNet HERS raters being another, an affordable housing group being another, the Associated General Contractors. There was a seat for the unions, but a really thoughtful, really proactive approach to how are we going to do this transition committee so that everyone has a seat at that table, and then take it very seriously to review this code and make sure everyone was comfortable with the leap we were going to make, because going from 2009 to 2021 is a big leap. And I think being sensitive to the fact that for the home builders, it is a big change in how they are constructing and is going to require quite a bit of training. And so the next step for that was to commit both at the state level, and then we were quite grateful to receive a Resilient and Efficient Codes Initiative grant specifically around this, to train to this new code, because it doesn't just happen overnight that you pass a code and everyone knows how to build to it. So we've built a really strong relationship amongst all of those groups, and everyone tries to stay really open in their communication channels about what's important. And we continue to be able to update and improve our code because of that.
There is a lot of activity in the Q&A about these codes. So I'm going to roll on with, you've actually answered more than one of them just in talking about it just now. So that's fabulous. This question from Cyrus Reed, what was the code you mentioned that included flood protection? Was it just the 2021 IRC and 2021 IBC, which might include some flood protection measures for certain weather zones?
Well, this is actually its own whole thing that's got its own whole group of people that get together and talk about it. There is reference codes built into the ICC. So ICC doesn't write every portion of the code. So for example, a lot of, in the in the efficiency code, a lot of things refer back to ASHRAE, who sets a lot of heating and cooling standards nationally. Then within IRC and IBC, they refer back to the Civil Engineering Code, the ASCE, and in this case, it's the ASCE 24, which sets standards around building in floodplains. The controversy around this code in Louisiana was that this used to be in an administrative chapter. So if you get really nerdy on building codes, the administrative chapter is advisory, it's not required. And it got moved into required portions of the IRC and IBC, I think actually in 2015. And Louisiana had kept it advisory as opposed to required. And so in 2021, when we went through the whole process and decided to create or basically adopt the ICC as written, in which it's moved into the mandatory portion, it's created some mandatory standards around building the floodplain. We did find that actually the majority of floodplain areas in Louisiana had actually created mandatory rules around freeboard, as it's called, already, but we wanted to just make sure we captured all portions of the state, because really addressing flood and wind is really, really important to us continuing to live here.
All right, Mark Silberg, I'm coming your way next with questions about building performance standards. Seeing a couple here. How do Colorado advocates address concerns about costs associated with building performance standards and future retrofits when advocating for the adoption of the building performance standard?
So I was not here when the initial legislation was passed, so I'm probably not the best person to speak exactly to that. I will say that if you read our Regulation 28, which is really the implementing rules underlying the building performance standard, you'll see that there were a number of different paths selected that buildings can choose from in order to actually comply with the requirement. The goal at a high level was a 20% GHG reduction in the sector by the end of the decade, from at the time 2021 levels, although legislation this year would allow buildings to choose a 2019 baseline, which better represents what full occupancy would look like pre-COVID for some of our commercial buildings. But I do think that the details in that regulation speak to both the flexibilities to think about some of the edge cases, right? I mean, we hear pretty frequently from buildings that, you know, of the 8,500, every single one is unique, and that's generally true. And so you'll find, energy intensity requirements, for instance, for data centers rather than an absolute emissions reduction requirement for data centers. We've also built into the process, both through the past legislation and then, with this approach to the enterprise, essentially more customer service from the state level, right? We have a small team of folks in the Colorado Energy Office who get calls every day from buildings about how do I comply? What's the most cost-effective path? We are seeing that a lot of buildings are able to comply cost effectively, right? And a lot of that hinges on financing and cost of capital. Things like on-bill financing can help, as well as the state tax credits and other incentives that we have to support buildings in adopting some of these technologies. But it's really, doing that work on a case-by-case basis and being willing to work with buildings and flexible to figure out what pathway works best for them. That has, I think, led to the success we've had so far, the emissions reductions we've seen, the investments we're seeing in the sector, and then we're feeling quite optimistic about 2030.
That's great. Again, you, I think, did a good job of touching another question here that was related to implementation and compliance, and to what extent have covered building owners stressed the importance of financial incentives and assistance in terms of meeting the required reductions. Is there anything you would add regarding the kind of the extent to which financial incentives and assistance have have been a factor for compliance?
It certainly helps, but I would say more of the emphasis and the feedback that we've heard from buildings has been really thinking about the timeline for targets and how those align with utility capital plan, or sorry, building capital planning. So for instance, the legislation initially was passed in 2021, the rulemaking took several years to undertake, and then there was an interim compliance date of 2026 for a modest reduction in the sector. And the reality was that as a combination of changing occupancy among covered buildings, the impact of COVID, which wouldn't have really been able to be foreseen at the time the legislation was at least being contemplated earlier than 2021. Our thinking has changed in that what we'd like to do, especially looking out past 2030, is identify targets that are far enough in advance that every building who is covered by the rule will do some kind of major upgrade in the time between today and meeting that target. And it's really when they do that sort of regularly scheduled retrofits, investment in building upgrades, that's the opportunity to do some of these deep energy retrofits or adopt on-site generation or do electrification. And so my word of encouragement is, incentives help, but maybe aren't always necessary. What really does help is understanding how buildings plan on a long time scale, using their existing capital resources in these kind of investments, and then building a goal and set of state policy that is aligned with that planning process.
Excellent. All right. This one is focused on Louisiana, though I think it's a question that has implications in many places these days. It says, how might the growth of data centers in Louisiana impact the state's energy efficiency posture? Will the increased energy use cut into the state's energy usage from non-green sources? As I say, this is a subject that many states are faced with right now, but Jackie, interested in your thoughts.
Yes, we have a big Meta data center that's been announced in the northern part of our state, and it's going to be some drama, I think, actually, over the next year or so when we talk about this. The reality is Louisiana has a lot of energy that could be saved in our state. We have some of the most inefficient buildings and homes in the country. One of the few rankings we end up either first, second, or third in every year when EIA comes out with that ranking for efficiency and kWh within homes. I hope that we do fully commit to our statewide energy efficiency rules, and that we make an attempt to see if we can save energy before we build more natural gas power plants onto our grid. Unfortunately, there is a big push right now to bring on more natural gas power plants onto the grid instead of that investment. And, we're going to fight it out. So we'll see what happens here. But it's definitely top of mind for most of us in the industry.
I'll take an opportunity to just add to that. And then Mark Kreswick, I'm coming to you with what likely will be our last question today to just reflect back that load growth is a subject we hear in really every major policy conversation, convening within the industry. It's on people's minds. It's a huge shift from low and flat load growth over the last 15 years to a big push to add new new demand onto the grid. So ACEEE will be doing some research on this year. We consider it to be one of the most important subjects that we focused on. So look towards the end part of the year for more on that. Mark, the question I wanted to pass to you has to do was a question by Mary Wambui here, had to do with the focus on electrification and how that is affecting the scorecard and kind of a metric that I think many people are used to of that savings, energy savings on an annual basis.
Yeah, I'll keep it short since we're running out of time, but we'll just flag that that is one reason why we are likely to change the methodology for future editions. So heads up to states. And we really look forward to everyone's feedback on what some of those methodological changes might be, in part because of this dynamic. As states spend more of their investment into electrification, what you see is a decrease in electricity savings, which of course, right, you're investing in increasing electricity savings because it decreases gas savings, because it delivers costs and health and safety and many, many tremendous other benefits. And so you're starting to see a separation between spending and savings. And that's actually exacerbated by some of the clean lighting policies at the state and federal level. So historically, a lot of the energy savings, lighting investments were a huge source of very cheap, cost-effective energy savings. And so those are largely going away. The focus on low-income households, it takes more investment in a low-income household to help achieve energy efficiency because sometimes you have to do health and safety repairs, which is so critical to invest in those things, but you're starting to see some separation between spending and electricity savings specifically, even if you're seeing growth in gas savings because of electrification. And so this separation is most dramatic in places like Massachusetts. And so we're going to take a look at that methodology in the future to really figure out how to better capture the incredible results that we're seeing from those programs.
Fabulous. Well, let me say a very big thank you to our presenters today, Mark Kresowik, Mark Silberg, and Jackie Dadakis. And we will close. First of all, I just want to say there have been some fabulous questions coming in. And if we didn't get to your question today, we will be following up. And of course, we will be posting the slides and a copy of the recording of the webinar that's coming up. There are some great ACEEE conferences coming up. Summer study on energy efficiency in industry is coming up in North Carolina this year in July. The Energy Efficiency as a Resource Conference, where we will absolutely be talking about load growth and all the ways that demand-side management is serving as a resource. We're coming up in Colorado in October. We have the Behavior, Energy, and Climate Change Conference, BEC, that's in November out in California, and the summer study on energy efficiency buildings is going to be next year. For those who know, get excited, and if you haven't been, all of these conferences are a fabulous place to meet your peers and to get it done, move us forward with energy efficiency. So really appreciate all of your time. Check out the 2025 State Scorecard. You'll find a huge wealth of information that we hope will be useful to you, and certainly continue to reach out to us. And thanks for all you do to move energy efficiency forward. So with that, we will conclude. Thank you so much.